If you move over $5,000 in crypto annually, you must declare your transactions to the tax authority. This is the new decision of the DNIT, Paraguay's tax authority, approved with resolution 4726 of March 10, 2026. A move that has many positives and many negatives, which is good to discuss in this video. Also because, as we will see, in reality the new regulation is explicitly made in such a way as to be followed only by those who want to follow it. Clearly, a fuss immediately broke out between those who see it as a wonderful thing that they have been awaiting for years and those who have seen it as the end of tax residency in Paraguay. Well, the post-news exaggeration is understandable, but here we want to make a complete and neutral analysis. Alright? Attention! Nothing changes regarding taxation. Cryptos continue to be subject to territorial taxation as we explained in our dedicated video, and individuals resident in Paraguay are subject to taxation on crypto only if they operate with local intermediaries, if they sell something locally and get paid in crypto, or if they sell to a subject, whether an individual or a company who is a resident of Paraguay. Furthermore, I also want to clarify that there will be no changes in this, because even after the DNIT introduced the new declaration obligation, the reality is that the regulation about taxation had already come into force before this new law, and it's pretty recent. So at this moment, what changes is exclusively the declaration obligation, but not the taxes. First of all, then, who is obliged to make this declaration? The answer is that all the individuals resident of Paraguay and the legal entities based in Paraguay who make transactions for over $5,000 during a year are obliged to. The cryptos you own and do not buy and do not sell and just simply own them throughout the year do not fall within this provision. And this immediately leads us to talk about the first and most evident topic of this whole conversation, namely the way you operate with your crypto. In fact, you can choose to operate as an individual or as a company. If you operate as an individual, therefore you have wallets registered to yourself as a person, then you are subject to this new regulation. Or, of course, you can establish any offshore structure, such as a US LLC, a foundation in Panama, an LLC in Nevis, in LTD in Hong Kong, all the other available options, and not be subject to this new regulation. Also, 90% of people who have their tax residency in Paraguay already have a structure of this kind to operate their business, and therefore there is nothing really incredible in all of this. Simply, before, those who purely traded cryptos did not necessarily need any LLC of offshore company or any kind. Well, now there is choice. Move your cryptos through an LLC and do not need to declare anything to the DNIT, or move your cryptos as an individual and therefore make the declaration to Paraguay. Therefore, obviously, at this moment the question is to understand what are the advantages and disadvantages of making this declaration or not. Let's start with the advantages. The first clear advantage is not being bothered by your country of origin, because before this reform there was no way to declare one's crypto in Paraguay. This meant that there was no way to be able to justify one's income coming from the crypto world, causing a significant short circuit. Let's take, for example, a Polish trader that has tax residency in Paraguay and he dedicates himself entirely to buying and selling cryptos. At the end of the year, before this reform, he had no real way to declare that he had carried out all these operations. And consequently, what happened? The Polish tax authority could go knocking on our trader's door and ask him, "Hey dear, can you actually show you have declared taxes in Paraguay?" And the other one had no real means to show that he had declared all these capital gains. So then the situation could, of course, be argued and resolved by showing tax residency certificate, explaining legal situation of crypto in Paraguay, and so on, but it was really an uncomfortable thing, and it's better not to face it. Now instead, our trader, if he decides to continue not moving his crypto to an offshore structure, will be able to declare all these transactions and not have any kind of problem with the tax authority of his country. The second advantage is being able to do off-ramping into a Paraguayan bank account, which was unthinkable before. This is precisely the concrete reason why this new regulation was passed. Many foreigners who need to transfer funds to Paraguay have clashed with the fact that Paraguayan banks did not want anything to do with cryptos or funds coming from the crypto world. So what did this mean? And why didn't they want to accept these funds, precisely because there was no way to understand if those funds were clean or not. Try to understand that for every European who would like to exploit tax residence in Paraguay to reduce their capital gain taxation, there are 100 Brazilian drug traffickers who would like to move their cryptos to Paraguay because they generated it with illicit activities. So the banks were doing very well actually not to accept these funds because 99% of them would not have been clean. Instead, now the attitude will be completely different. If you can tell us where the funds are coming from and whether or not they were taxed or are taxable or not, it doesn't matter. As long as they are clean, you can put them in a bank and use them to access the Paraguayan financial system. In fact, after the publication of the DNIT's new circular, 3 different banks have asked to become regulated platform for on-ramps and off-ramps of cryptos to the Paraguayan central bank. Now, let's see instead what the disadvantages are. Basically, if you're a person who maximizes their privacy and believes that communicating any crypto movement is a violation of their financial freedom, the negative note is that now you will have to spend a few $100s to establish and maintain a US LLC or any offshore structure in Panama, Nevis, the BVI, Hong Kong, or wherever you prefer. I understand the inconvenience of doing that, and I also understand that the average foreigner does not know what really happens in Paraguay and thinks that the rules here are introduced because of the Canadian digital nomad or for the French Bitcoin trader, but it's not really like that. Over 60% of requests for residence in Paraguay come from Brazilian citizens, and there are very dubious capital flows to clean the money that comes out of the Rio and São Paulo cartels, and that is the big problem. And the other disadvantage is that if you want to make the declaration, the way it has to be done is pretty long and boring. It requires a lot of manual work on your part, on your accountant's part. Now, to be honest, probably the bad guys will continue not to make the declaration, and the DNIT absolutely does not have the means to control this. In fact, the rule in itself is stupid, there is nothing to say. I don't know how they can think that a drug trafficker will start filing out the form to declare their crypto transactions. Even more so, the ones operating with decentralized wallets, it's completely unthinkable. So for those who want to take advantage of the declaration to avoid tax problems with their country of origin or to be able to do off-ramping in a Paraguayan bank, here is what needs to be done. When making the annual declaration, which is done every year in March, so the first time in this case will be March 2027 with reference to one's movements of 2026, you will have a new model specifically prepared by the DNIT in which one's operations and the counterparties of each operation must be listed. This also applies to all operations that have an exchange or an individual or legal entity not resident in Paraguay as a counterparty. For each operation, the amount, the type of cryptocurrency used, and the date will have to be communicated. All of this, as always, through the Marangatu platform, which is where all the Paraguayan taxation is managed. That's literally all there is to know about it. So, for now, that's all from Asunción for today. Please write me in the comments what do you think about this new regulation, and as always, I'll see you in Paraguay.